All right, you're all set to go.
Thank you so much. Welcome to West Hartford Conservation and Environment Commission, February 28th, 2022. Time is 7:04 p.m. I am your host, Matt Masunis. This is a virtual meeting broadcast live on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 5 and Frontier Channel 6098. We have links available for members and those who wish to speak during public comment portion of this meeting featured on the agenda. Anyone else, please tune into the YouTube link also featured on the agenda. I'll start with attendance. Matt Masunis here. I'll go by order of squares here. Emily Scott, if you could just unmute for me.
Here.
Kim Hughes.
Here.
Sean Daly.
Present.
Ted Newton.
Present.
Rick Bush.
Here.
And we do have quorum this evening. We have on the agenda, first up, public comments opportunity, first in order. If nobody minds, we would encourage a limitation of, let's call it 3 minutes per person. And you could kick us off. We've got a few different things on our agenda here between old business and new business, the new business items added to the list as a result just of dialogue at the tail end of last meeting and those things that folks thought might be discussed. And if folks don't mind, I'm wondering if we could suspend on old business and move that to the end, because I anticipate that'll be the longest part of the discussion. Rather than trying to resolve that now, let's go straight to.
Matt, do you need a motion for that? Not that I care. The rule.
I care deeply. Let's go straight to rather than put folks through the rigors right here. While I've got everyone's attention, can we please have a motion for approval of minutes from January 31st, 2021?
This is Ted Newton. I make that motion for approval of the minutes from January 2022. I think you meant to say. You said 2021.
Thank you, sir.
This is Sean Daly, CEC member. I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any amendments? All right, thanks so much. Public comment opportunity. So by order of folks as I greeted them coming into the meeting beforehand, I saw Christine first, Ms. Feely, then Mr. Pollack, then Mr. Derby.
All right.
And you're on mute, ma'am.
Christine, you're on mute.
I'll go last and let Steve or Edward go first. Steve, you want to go?
Mr. Derby, would you like to
sure.
greet the commission?
Yes. I just have some brief comments. I'm resident up at, I live at West White Avenue. And I just want to speak in favor of, I guess, this idea of transferring to I can't think. Phasing out gas-powered lawn care equipment and going all electric. I think that's a good idea. I just want to put in my 2 cents. I'm very concerned about global warming, and we should do everything we can to reduce our carbon footprint and reduce our consumption of gas and oil. So I come to learn that electric lawn care equipment is more widely available and more reliable, and so it seems reasonable for the town to phase out its own use of gas-powered equipment and to require landscaping companies to transition electric equipment and to encourage our residents to do the same. And I think while lawn care may seem a small part of the global climate change problem. It's a reasonable and practical step, and we need to do everything we can. And this is something that seems a practical way to take a little step for reducing our carbon footprint. So that's that's what I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Well, let's go next to Mr. Edward Pollack, if I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My wife and I moved to West Hartford in 1992, and we live in the center of town where there are mostly small lots, which really characterize much of the town. And as a result, people live in close proximity to one another. And since we've been here, leaf blowers in particular have become more and more powerful and more ubiquitous. We certainly have noticed the trend. And for many years it was something that you came to expect in the fall. The leaves would fall from the trees and people would clear them with their leaf blowers. We now find this year that these leaf blowers are now being used to clear light snow in our neighborhood. So it's become now not just a one season, and not even just sort of towards the end of the fall season. It's now become a two season problem. It's now fall and summer, or other fall and winter. And I'd like to play for the commission a recording that I made just standing across the street this past fall, as a neighbor just across the street was using. It's a backpack, very powerful leaf blower. I want you to hear what we were hearing across the street.
It sounds tranquil, although I heard something at the front end.
Yep, we can't hear
Sorry?
anything.
You're not hearing it?
No, unfortunately.
That isn't okay. I don't know why it's not coming through, but I can describe it as ear piercing. Is the only way I can describe it, and painful to the point of actually being painful if you're outside. And in addition to all of the environmental issues that were raised last month by the public and many of the commissioners, I'd like to suggest to the commission that in addition to all of those things, these leaf blowers have become a quality of life issue in our community, to the detriment of the quality of life in our community. And it's, our houses, our homes don't even protect us from this noise. This high-pitched noise penetrates the wall. Just last week, a couple of weeks ago, I was watching a remote church service on a Sunday, and a neighbor was clearing the snow from their walk, and that literally was penetrating through the walls of our house to the point where I really couldn't even concentrate on this church service. And noise is part of our environment. This truly is a quality of life issue as they become more and more ubiquitous. And I would suggest to you that a community that's plagued by these ubiquitous piercing noises is simply not sustainable. And I do believe that this commission should be concerned about making West Hartford a sustainable community. And I really urge you to please bring some relief to our community. Turn this thing around. Just because it can be built doesn't mean that it has to be used. And, these are not getting any gentler. They're only getting worse. And insulating our homes is not a solution, as one commissioner suggested last month. That's putting the blame on the victims. So I urge you to do everything you can to end this plague of piercing noise in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And once again, regardless of where you stand on that issue, I will also encourage all residents to insulate their homes regardless. And final speaker, we have Ms. Christine Felix.
Okay, so thank you to the commission for hearing these comments. And my comments tonight are about, again, also transitioning to lawn care, electric lawn care and landscaping equipment, as they were last month. And I want to emphasize for those places where grass is needed and where it's not really needed, converting those areas that have grass now to more environmentally sound planting, specifically native trees, shrubs, and flowers. And I'll start by reading the opening paragraphs of several, actually for interest of time, I'll just do two, news reports today about the report issued yesterday by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. You may have seen some headlines about that today. And this is from the New York Times. The dangers of climate change are mounting so rapidly that they could soon overwhelm the ability of both nature and humanity to adapt unless greenhouse gas emissions are quickly reduced, according to a major new scientific report released on Monday. It was actually yesterday, but whatever. The report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a body of experts convened by the United Nations, is the most detailed look yet at the threats posed by global warming. It concludes that nations aren't doing nearly enough to protect cities, farms, and coastlines, that's very important for Connecticut, from the hazards that climate change has unleashed so far, such as record droughts and rising seas, let alone from the even greater disasters in store as the planet continues to warm. So that's from the New York Times. From the Associated Press, actually, let me skip to The Hill, which is a slightly different type newspaper. It has a very similar report. This is the latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is out, and the findings are grim. Climate change is affecting every corner of the planet, and dangerous and costly impacts are coming earlier and are more widespread and extensive than previously thought. And the United States is not immune to these impacts. The IPCC, that's that group, found that rising temperatures and extreme weather are already disrupting everything from food production to supply chain infrastructure to the spread of some diseases. And that's the end of what the Hill newspaper has. So these sets of opening paragraphs drive home the fact that the time is really now to do everything we can to limit greenhouse gas emissions. And I completely agree with Edward that the noise is just unbelievable. And awful. It really makes you want to like go out and take this thing away and throw it away or something. But on the plus side of this whole issue is that one, reducing the need for mowing grass and blowing leaves around, and transitioning quickly to electric equipment are two of the most feasible actions that we can take. There are a lot of aspects of this. I mean, this will reduce greenhouse gases, but there are a lot of aspects of the climate change problem that are hard for us to address. This is truly not one of them. Yes, of course, it will take money, but everything takes money. Climate change has already become tremendously expensive, and it will only get more so. Next, I'd like at the January meeting, and Edward, you made a reference to the January meeting. Several concerns were raised about the feasibility and the desirability of converting to electric equipment. So I want to comment on those briefly as I see it. One comment was that there's not enough clean and renewable energy to support transitioning to electric equipment. But we in this country and in West Hartford have barely begun to take advantage of the sources for clean energy. For example, West Hartford has plenty of potential for solar canopies. A recent analysis by the People's Action for Clean Energy, which is known as PACE, you may have heard of them, identified 63 sites in West Hartford with a capacity to produce a significant amount of power relative to the town's needs. And taken together with rooftop solar, the capacity for rooftop solar, of course, it's much greater. And yet West Hartford has few, if any, notable solar canopy installations. So I've already spoken to Clean Energy about that too. That's sort of in their court, but it does address the concern that we don't or won't have enough clean energy sources. And then of course, you can also address this by reducing the need. So the amount of space that gets mowed and leaves are blown around, it can be addressed, as I said early on, by just simply reducing. It's a kind of conservation, which we're all about. In the same way that insulation reduces the amount of energy needed, you can do other kinds of things And one of them is converting these grassy areas. In terms of the municipal areas, grassy areas that are not needed for sports fields or picnic areas or some other things that we can all agree that we do want to have in grass, can be converted to the areas of native trees, bushes, and flowers. These will be much more environmentally sound compared with grass. And that seems like to fall right into the category of what conservation and environment could do. And it's in a public education campaign for residents to reduce the amount of grass in their yards and convert to this other type of landscaping seems both doable and appropriate. Another concern that was raised was the concern about whether there were appropriate options for municipal and commercial use. And I happened to see an article last summer about a municipality, the town of Mountain Brook, Alabama, which is a suburb of Birmingham, has already converted to their municipal equipment to electric lawn care and landscaping equipment. And of course, some towns in California have also transitioned to electric equipment. They are, again, leading the way on this. But I was kind of struck by the example of Mountain Brook because the description of it in the Washington Post article was an affluent suburb of Birmingham. And I thought to myself, well, we're an affluent suburb of Hartford, so maybe we're similar. Now, their town is smaller, although Birmingham is actually a larger city in terms of population in the city than Hartford is in the city. But it is a small town, but a smaller town, but I assume that their resources are proportional. So, you know, if they can do it, we can do it. You may also know that legislation was signed into law in California in October that requires new small off-road engines, of which these, you know, lawnmowers and things, to be zero emissions by 2024, and that is soon. And also in terms of who has done it or has it been done, I found an article, I'm happy to provide these to the commission, that was actually published in 2017 already, describing efforts in California to provide financial incentives for landscaping companies to transition to electric equipment. And one particular landscaper who really wanted to do that because of all the things we've talked about, noise, pollution, worker health, all that sort of thing. And so all these changes are possible and have been done in other places, and we can do them too. There was, and I'm probably running out of time here, but there was also the concern about lithium-ion batteries, both from the standpoint of producing lithium-ion batteries and the problems of sourcing and that sort of thing, but also the eventual management of the materials. But you know, as you can imagine, there's a lot of innovation occurring in production of batteries, and in particular, there's something called aluminum air batteries that are being developed. And the description, I found a couple of articles. I mean, you can find as much information as you could possibly want, but say that they're called batteries, but they're actually work somewhat more like fuel to produce energy. And I'm sure there are other innovations underway that I'm not aware of. So we really don't want to limit ourselves to what we know now or even what we can do now. And there's just so much potential for us to, over the course of a few years, through awareness, education, incentives, to really move toward transitioning to electric equipment and reducing the need for this equipment in the town of West Hartford. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Feely. I am thinking of instituting an informal rule now that if you appear before this commission up to 3 times in a 6-month period, you have to think about applying for membership on the commission.
Well, you know, you and I both know why some of the places on commissions don't get filled, because they have to be assigned. There are quotas for Republicans. So
Minority
that
Party
doesn't include me.
representation, only correct.
Make it sound like that's a bad thing.
Luckily, yeah.
Right. Well, we'll have to contemplate bumping privileges, or you know, what line of succession looks like then, or that's the town council job. So thank you all for all of your public comments. Contrary to what I had mentioned or suggested at the top of the hour, we might as well stick with the agenda order of discussion, since all public commenters were talking about the exact item that was next up on the agenda. So for old business, report back from ad hoc group on landscape equipment educational campaign recommendations. So as you recall, last month we decided that the most rational way to tackle this issue in a concrete way that produced demonstrable steps toward obliging town hall's referral to us of this issue and their inquiry to us on what should be done and what might we recommend to the town. We had thought as a group, or agreed as a group, that the most practical way to do that would be to establish a subgroup of people that could put something on paper and then bring it back to this group for consideration, ratification, changes, discussion generally. And now is that time. So if you'll allow me, I'd like to screen share what had been workshopped by myself, Mr. Newton, and Ms. Hughes, if that works. And let me get to it here. And is the correct item sharing draft recommendation?
Yes.
All right, so I'll keep this on the screen while we're discussing it, and maybe we could workshop this in real time. Just for the sake of accessibility purposes and because it's not terribly long, I'll just review it right now and read it verbatim. So the Conservation Environment Commission recommends to the town of West Hartford the adoption of a resolution identifying the benefits of switching from emitting combustion-powered landscape maintenance equipment to battery-powered equipment and affirming support and encouragement for a phase-out over time undertaken with substantive community input and engagement. This action would be in service to the January 25th, 2022 unanimously adopted resolution declaring a climate crisis. The resolution in part states that it shall be the policy of the town, quote, to assess the climate change impacts of all future town actions, achieve net zero carbon emissions from town activities as quickly as practicable, and to encourage residents to do the same, end quote. The resolution further states, quote, that the town manager shall coordinate and employ the resources of the town through consultation with the Clean Energy Commission, the Conservation and Environment Commission, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission, the Sustainability Advisory Group, and other stakeholders, including youth, to mitigate the effects of anthropogenic climate change and to improve air quality through the implementation of projects, practices, and policies that reduce, eliminate, or counteract the burning of fossil fuels and the emission of greenhouse gases, end quote. Last paragraph, Conservation Environment Commission recommends commissioning the creation of a working group composed of volunteer members of the above-mentioned stakeholder bodies. This working group shall further develop strategies recommending combustion-powered lawn equipment use curtailment and fuel switching. The group shall develop strategies for the creation of a public education campaign and may also make recommendations regarding the establishment of a swap fund to incent consumer changeovers to non-emitting landscape equipment. This working group may be established in anticipation of or as a result of town council consideration of a resolution on this matter. That is what I have. That is the workshop's product that we bring to you tonight. And so as we open for discussion and just for what do folks think of this, is this consistent with what had been discussed in previous months? Are there logical, other ways we could sequence this or better ways that we can get at this? All ears. Why don't we try for a round robin of first blush opinions from members, and then we'll circle back for subsequent rounds, if that seems like an appropriate way to go about it.
It works.
That works. Is that consistent? Do folks feel that's consistent with what has been previously, I guess I could say, agreed to, or as a general approach? I see Mr. Daly with his hand up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean Daly, CEC member. So I would say for the most part, I would agree with that. My only issue is the last sentence of the first paragraph that says affirming support and encouragement for a phase out over time. My issue is that could be interpreted as a mandate, or allow the town manager and town council to think that we support a mandate for total elimination of gas-powered lawn equipment. And I think that the majority of the members at the time had voted that we did not want to see that. That was a major issue. So I do take issue with the phrase support and encourage for a phase out over time.
Thank you, sir, for the input. Let me just jot that down. I would say that that specific, since that's the declarative sentence, right, for what does this do, it kind of speaks the most to it. We did go back and forth on that, and tried to land on this as the middle ground. I would say that it does not make clear, it's not prescriptive in saying whether the phase out is voluntary or compulsory in any given segment, right? So that was left unsaid.
If I may respond.
Since I was responding to you, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean Daly, CEC member. But that's exactly it. I think we want to make sure that there's no misinterpretation for the decision that was made by this body, which was that we do not support a mandate of the town to eliminate gas-powered equipment. Certainly education and information and incentives are an appropriate way. But again, as we stated before, I think that if we went to a town referendum for such an item, it would be, in my opinion, would be woefully turned down. And I think that the town is a bit tired of a minority group telling them what to do.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. My first reaction, hearing the list of stakeholder groups, is that we don't have anyone on there from like your large landholders, like the golf course that we heard from a couple months ago, or any kind of commercial lawn care outfits. And then as as you read further and as it kind of soaked in a little bit, it struck me that that may be intentional and appropriate because this is really consumer facing rather than large landholder or commercial facing. But I would appreciate kind of the thinking on how the stakeholder groups were identified, and if it's really just a commercial consumer focus.
Sure, great question. So let me find. Oh, this is the last line, right? Nope. First line, last paragraph, correct?
Yeah, and then the stakeholders are discussed in the preceding paragraph, like the Clean Energy Commission, Conservation, Environment, Pedestrian and Bicycle, Sustainability, and other stakeholders, including youth. So it strikes me that like an important stakeholder in a broader discussion of lawn equipment has been the large landholders, like the representative from the golf course that spoke with us a few months ago. So it struck me that there were that was not listed as a stakeholder group, the kind of pro users, either for their land or because that's their job. And so I'm kind of sharing that impression, and I guess wanted to have a dialogue about, was that intentional? Because we're not talking about them. We're not talking about the pro users. We're talking about consumers.
So I could say it was not intentional because of the umbrella clause ending the first paragraph, undertaken with substantive community input and engagement. which was meant to be inclusive of any and all who are not mentioned explicitly under the quoted sections of the climate resolution with which this seems to be in service to. So if that's, not objectionable to anybody, then, we could certainly call out specifically those sorts of groups as well on a consultative basis.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Bush.
Sir.
Is there any clarification between a homeowner, let's say, who owns an acre or 2 acres of land and has a significant amount of land versus a homeowner that owns a 0.19 parcel?
The latter being myself. No. And
The
that,
former being myself.
right. So that distinction would presumably be something that gets examined by this joint working group commissioned from, volunteers from this commission, from the community, from the Sustainability Advisory Group, and the Clean Energy Commission, other enthusiasts, since this is sitting at a cross section of policy, so to speak. So no, this does not make a distinction upon that, because the formal actions to be undertaken as a result of the town's consideration of this would kind of be setting that continued path of deliberation for sectoral strategies. Is this commercial facing, resident facing, town use facing? If that makes sense.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
Hi, Matt.
Ms. Hughes.
Hi, everyone. So, I was not here in November, and so please bear with me and I've never served on a commission before, so please bear with me as I kind of understand the rules. I heard Sean Daly refer to the decision that was made in November. And is there some formality then around that decision? Can we not revisit this idea of recommending, or at least like keeping the floor open for a more formal ban and not merely education and recommendations? Because that is, I think, a few of us have done quite a bit of research. We've looked into letters to the editor. We've looked into what other towns have done, and I was hard pressed to find any examples of changes like this being effective without some kind of ban or partial ban. And so I guess what I'm saying is I think the piece also, though, that I saw a lot of towns engage in, and I'm not sure if that has happened, and again, I don't have the history you guys do, but is that like robust community discussion, that discussion that would include groups like the golf clubs and people who have an interest, the business owners, other members of the community, nonprofits in our community. And I'm not sure, is everyone here satisfied that that is what happened over the last few months or in November when you guys last had this discussion, and I guess January for that matter?
I don't want to buffalo everyone on it. If anyone, you want to do a quick round robin of opinions. Mr. Newton?
Who wants to start?
I could start.
Well,
I think we
Mr. Newton.
clearly came to
Okay,
the conclusion that, I'm sorry, this is Commissioner Bush. I think we clearly came to the conclusion that a ban was not something that we were interested in as a group. There's just too many reasons why we had discussed previously why we didn't feel that it was a good idea. I don't really want to talk more. I just wanted to basically state that we had agreed as a group that a ban is not the direction we wanted to go in.
At that point, and now I'll jump in and I'll give you time to at that point in time, we kind of took a temperature of the vocal members of the group in that time that was brought to us. And it was determined that if we were to go the route of a ban, that it would not garner sufficient support at a subsequent meeting, presumably in the month to follow or the 2 months to follow that discussion. If that were brought back to the group, that it would likely not get a plurality of votes of the group as an approach. More broadly speaking, you know, there's those rationales that we batted around before about you know, things working in tandem in terms of policies, the need for like a runway of education, the availability of rival goods, that sort of thing, for consumers to be working under a ban structure at the same time. And so a ban alone was not going to be on the table. As for the question of what could be revisited and how, you know, open question, and perhaps that's once more a temperature taking session here. I try to be a man of my word, and so, you know, like a previous agreement is a previous agreement in terms of what the members had stated at that time. So that's the way I was approaching it in terms of, you know, procedurally overtaking me on that. You know, smarter people to weigh in.
Well, I'll go ahead and weigh in. I'm not, by doing so, not claiming to be smarter than you. But you just left a great opening there, Matt. So I'll jump at the chance. I just want to remind not only the commission, but folks who are attending the meeting that we have had a number of hearings on this particular matter that were advertised to the public. The agendas were made public. We had quite a bit of community input, I think, starting back in August or September. I would guess that we've heard from perhaps over 24 members of the community. Of course, I don't know who we haven't heard from, but we've heard from people on both sides of the issue. We've heard from commercial landscapers. We've heard from the golf course, you know, manager. We've heard from a lot of different perspectives, and I think we took all that into account when we discussed in November where our approach was. And yes, we agreed as a commission that we were not ready at this time to recommend a ban or any type of regulatory approach to limiting the use of gas-powered equipment. Doesn't mean we can't revisit the issue in a year or so, but I think that what's in front of the commission right now is a recommendation to the town, which I believe is due within the next several weeks. Matt, I think you've got a better gauge on the timing of it all, but that was kind of the timeline that we had worked out as a commission. We came to a consensus late 2021 and just needed to kind of coalesce our thoughts into something that would be presented to the town in the form of a recommendation from the CEC, and that's what we have here in front of us today. So, and just seconding what I think what you just said, Matt, was you know, the education part of it is integral to really any further action on, you know, incenting and or, you know, incenting people to switch from gas powered to electric or through a ban at some point in the future, whether it's limited or full. We feel that education is an important first step, and that needs to be done first before we move on to consider really anything else. So I'll be happy to, you know, if anybody wants to clarify that and from their own perspective, or if I misspoke, you know, let's bring it up.
Any other hot takes?
I would just add that I like this recommendation. Of course, I was on the team that put it together, but and I agree that education is a critical piece. I think we are making a recommendation. We are not responsible for this education, this program, campaign, whatever, but I think we have to think about what that would look like and how effective it will be and who's doing it, because I don't, I'm racking my brain trying to think of effective educational campaigns around topics like this in our town. So if anyone can think of something, I'd love that reference point. And then also I would just add that things have been changing quickly, I think, in our landscape, no pun intended. And I think at the state level, at our town level, the commitment to efforts that combat or address, or draw down lessen the effects of climate change and lessen greenhouse gases. It seems like the landscape is changing so quickly. It almost seems like, conversations that we could have had, months ago should not be quite the same.
Any others? Mr. Daly, hand up.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, Sean Daly, CEC member. I think the issue that I have with what's been mentioned here is that there has to be some sort of consistency and credibility with our organization. And I think the problem is that when you make a decision, even if it's one that is not liked, does that mean you keep going and keep going and keep going until you get the decision that you like? And the problem is that when you do that, you could end up losing credibility with the town of West Hartford. In my opinion, we've Commissioner Newton's comments, we've asked for opinion, we've heard opinion, we've made our decision. We need to follow it through. I agree that doesn't mean that it's not something that can be looked on in the future. Certainly decisions are made to be changed, but to go back now and look at changing this quickly would undermine the credibility of this commission. Thank you.
That was through me. I wonder if it was at me.
I don't think so.
This is Commissioner Bush. Can I speak one more time?
Yes, sir.
I just say that I think that we have had substantive conversations over the last several meetings. And I think that in order to really have any consideration to make any changes, really all of those arguments would need to be re-brought up again. And we need to have a whole debate from start to finish in order to make sure that everybody who's participating in the discussion, has all the information that we've all been listening to for several months. So I think there's just a lot of good points made on both sides of the argument. And I don't think it's our place at this point in the game to start to rehash all of these things. We've spent too much time and too much effort to get to where we are today. So thank you. I'm sorry, I have a cold, so my voice is a little scratchy.
You sound great, sir. And I don't disagree about the amount of time it's taken to get right here. And my instinct is in the same place, that we would have to have a substantive back and forth, once again, rehashing the things that had come up, which, we're pretty effectively rehashed through public comment, at least on one side. So kudos to our public commenters. I would encourage that, setting aside for the moment the language that's on the screen and where that lands, and if we add an extra word or subtract a word here that might be impactful, that some of the folks enthusiastic about this policy be the joiners on a subsequent commission that we would hope that the town establishes to do the steering here, to help guide where this lands. And I say that with recognition of something that hasn't been said yet, which was in our ad hoc group that was developing this, our thinking was, this is not a one and done sort of a thing, right? This is an ongoing campaign, month by month. It's potentially going for years, right? Is it going to be in front of the CEC for years? Well, we're hoping that this group of enthusiasts pulled from other commissions, from stakeholders around the town, that sort of thing, can be convened by the town, perhaps. At least we see it sequencing that way, so that they can continue on that path of steering where the facts deem appropriate at any given time. Just at this point in time, the facts are landing on, we had made a previous agreement and taken the temperature of the members that suggesting an outright ban at this time was not going to be where we were going to land and would not garner a plurality of the votes. So that's my take at the moment, and gives a little bit more background as to why we took the approach that we did. So it seemed like there was a bit of, perhaps agreement when it came to the language, but for something that had been raised by Mr. Daly. You had a concern that the language was not specific enough in terms of being exclusionary on certain policies. Think along the lines of the last sentence of the first paragraph, right? Has this dialogue made you comfortable, sir? I guess I would ask in terms of, is that language sufficiently flexible enough that it would leave to this subsequent group of enthusiasts, volunteers, and stakeholders the ability to determine where and how they might work with the town in future months and years when it comes to this ongoing issue, and it will be an ongoing issue with regard to addressing these sorts of fuel use, technology shifts and use curtailments and things like that. That was a long question, but
Was that for me?
trying to get you to yes.
Yeah, the biggest issue here that I want to avoid, Mr. Chairman, Sean Daly, CEC member, the big issue that I want to avoid is for the town council to be able to refer to this document, and if they were to vote on a ban, refer to this document and say, per the recommendation of the CEC, we're voting in favor of a ban because they affirm and support encouragement for a phase out. I think we need to have language in this document that specifically states we are not in favor of a ban. Thank you.
Interesting proposal. Others, let me open that up to others. My first instinct is I don't really like that. I'll open it to others.
This is Ted Newton, CEC Commissioner. I would disagree with that language on its own. Now, if we wanted to say at this time we are not recommending a ban, that would be accurate. But we have not, I don't think the consensus of the commission is that we don't think a ban is something that the council shouldn't recommend at some point in the future. We're just not there yet.
Sure.
So if we wanted to say we're not recommending a ban at this time, I'd be happy to support that language.
Yeah, to Sean Daly, CEC member, to Commissioner Newton's comments, I'm fine with that. To say at this time,
great.
That to me is an accurate statement.
We've already got that in public meeting minutes, so it is an accurate statement.
Yes, but we also, well, never mind.
Yeah, no need to fight back. I'm landing on the same place right here. So with the addition, and let's workshop it in real time so it can be done, right? Maybe the back end of this first paragraph. Ted, would you like to phrase that again and pick the landing spot? You did a pretty good job with that.
I did. Can you increase the prominence a little bit there, Matt? The screen. Oh boy, staring at a computer for 12 hours a day now has just totally ruined my eyesight over the last 2 years. So a small complaint, I know, but
am I improving things?
Yes, thank you. So an affirming support and encouragement phase out over. about affirming support and encouragement for an educational effort to let's see, that's already covered. Let's see, adoption of resolution identifying benefits of switching from, and it's affirmative support and encouragement for an education effort, you know, reiterating the same or something like that, since we've already talked about the educational benefits previously in the sentence.
Should we move that? I mean, the phase out over time, I feel like that should probably be somewhere, because that is like an ultimate objective in service to the other resolution being cited here. Should we move that to the third paragraph where it discusses what this subsequent body of volunteers and other group members might recommend to council, future council, that sort of thing? In other words, leave it up top for, okay, Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean Daly, CEC Chairman, CEC member. Would it be agreeable to say combustion-powered landscape maintenance equipment to battery-powered equipment, and while not supporting a ban at this time, affirming support and encouragement for a phase out over time? I would be amenable to that.
I'll draft it for the moment. Hold on.
I think that's kind of what Ted had mentioned.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sean. This is Ted Newton, CEC Commissioner, but it's actually, yeah. Let's see.
The trick is, in having it there, we're recommending that the town is stating that they do not support an explicit ban at this time, rather than stating what our position is. So we should be clear about how that shows up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although that was not my concern.
I don't necessarily agree with that. It says the CE recommends to the town of West Hartford the adoption of a resolution identifying the benefits of switching from, yeah. And
well,
while
we could
not
start
supporting
right off.
an explicit.
Yes, start off by saying this: the CEC is not recommending an explicit ban at this time. However, it recommends the town of West Hartford that.
Yeah.
Yep,
I'd bring that while clause to the beginning of the sentence.
Yep. I could agree with that. Yep, I agree with that.
Good readability. Wow, right up top, huh?
If we'd like to soften the introduction and not lead with, we don't recommend a ban, we can lead with a little bit of the backstory that members of the community have brought it to our attention, and the the town manager or town council, whoever it was, specifically brought this question to us. So it's not like, it's kind of,
Here's the background.
Setting the stage a little bit, like, why are we even talking about this?
Okay. Are folks willing to take that on trust if I wordsmith that first sentence in line with Emily's recommendation without having to workshop it in real time?
This is Sean Daly, CC member. I'm good with that.
Okay. You too.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
I agree.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you, folks. I would love to know how to stop sharing. Oh, I have, did other folks see a chat?
Yes.
Visual? Can you please read it, Ted,
to.
because it disappeared on me.
Okay, I've got it here. So this is from Christine Feely to everybody, and she writes, if I may suggest a clarification or a correction, not all electric equipment is battery powered. Some lawnmowers, weed whips, and leaf blowers use cords.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
That's an excellent point. So non-emitting, is that all right?
We just say electric or battery powered. Would that suffice? I mean, for all we know, we may have solar, powered equipment at some point in the near future. So,
God help us, then we'll really have a landfill problem.
Replace battery with either corded, electric, or, and this is my preference,
Non-emitting.
non-emitting.
Never heard that word before, but I like it.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any objections at this stage? Okay, stop sharing. And thank you, Christine, for that catch. Okay, good. This pleases me very much so after this extended discussion that has been going on since the leaf blowers were running back in the late summer and early fall. So this may very well help the town find its footing on this policy issue more so going into the 2022 spring season. And then from there, the enthusiasm of the public and its volunteers, which is very well received by this commission, will be even more valuable on a continuing basis in terms of helping shape that, in my opinion, and steer the town's engagement on that. So thank you once again. Moving forward, agenda item number 4, new business, election of officers. How exciting. And what a most auspicious occasion. So we do have again, previous handshake agreement from a previous meeting, although I don't know if it was formalized, that Mr. Matt Masunas, myself, would not be continuing on as chair of the Conservation and Environment Commission. Not that I'm being pushed out by anyone but myself volunteering that at first, but wanting to cultivate more leaders with this commission and more know-how as far as facilitating meetings, because there's so much great brain power here. So with that in mind, what we had, well, I suppose I'll just open up the floor. I'm trying to think of the right procedural way to do this so that it's not just a total coronation, but we kind of knew what to expect as of a previous meeting. Do we have any nominees for chairman of the Conservation Environment Commission moving into the 2022 season beyond the course of this meeting? I see Mr. Daly's hand up.
I nominate Emily Scott for chairman of the Conservation Environment Commission for West Hartford. Sean Daly, CEC Commissioner. Sorry.
Daly nominates Scott.
Ted Newton, CEC Commissioner. I will second that nomination.
Do we have nominations for any other person?
I nominate Matt Masunas. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for your retraction, so I didn't have to get into a procedural thing. Mr. Daly, your hand is remaining up, or is that new? Okay. All in favor on Emily Scott as the next chairman, chairwoman, chairperson of the Conservation and Environment Commission? Say aye.
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 Any concerns? Any opposed?
Nope.
Your hands up.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Commissioner, just point of order. I believe I'm still vice chair, and I'm happy to give that up if someone would like to be nominated for vice chair. Did we have a discussion previously on that?
What is your, if I may ask, what is your plan? Because my understanding had been the caucus was working to select someone else for the Republican seat. So yeah, what's the status of that whole thing, I guess?
You had your own form of succession planning.
Yeah. No, that is part of it. The succession plan is that I do plan to resign and be replaced.
Mhm.
We're just Mary Fay and I need to get together, and we've been kind of going one at a time with each ones, and we just haven't gotten to the CEC yet. But I do have potential for replacement. We need to have some conversations. But yes, I'm hoping that maybe by the March meeting, or at the latest by April meeting, I'll look for I'll have my replacement.
So you're throwing an interesting agenda sub item here for us, Mr. Daly, and thank you for your service as well throughout this time. And so, do we have nominations for a vice chair of the Conservation and Environment Commission at this time? And you may nominate yourself because otherwise no one's going to know who's interested, right? So, as this is a new topic. Mr. Daly.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman, Sean Daly, CEC member. I guess point of order is, can we table that until later in the year, say when my replacement is made, and see if he or she would be interested in that role?
I saw head nods from the most loyally among us.
I favor that path. I think, it's if Matt is trying to extricate himself and your replacement is teed up but not yet with us, it might make sense to make that selection once we do have, folks here. But
This is Ted Newton, Commissioner. I guess I have a question. So one, wasn't aware that we had a vice chair on the commission. That certainly makes sense for us to do so, but is it also one that is a political consideration, in the sense that the chairperson and the vice chair would be of different political parties?
I can answer that, and Mr. Daly is also answering that with his head shake. The past two vice chairs that we've had, it happened to be that they were counterpoint parties to the chair. It doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. Look to the town council, for example. They nominate their own, and it's a plurality of the votes. So
Right.
it's not necessarily a requirement.
Yeah, I figured because we were an appointed body as opposed to an elected body, perhaps there were some rules around, equal representation for different parties and represented by the officers of the, of the commission. But knowing that that's not the case, then I don't think, I was going to say that would be an additional reason to wait for Sean's replacement. I also noticed that Ronnie's not here, so we would want to make sure that, if in fact we were looking to somebody from, her party to be the vice chair, that we would want to make sure that she had every opportunity to nominate herself. So I agree is what I'm saying. let's defer this for another couple of months until things settle down a little bit, or I should say shake out in terms of who's on the commission.
Congratulations again to Chairman Scott.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yay. Thank you. And thank you to Matt for your capable leadership over the years, particularly as we've pivoted to this very strange Brady Bunch configuration here. And it has been a pleasure to serve with you, and I'll raise my remote, water tumbler here. And thank you for your many years of chairmanship.
Chairman Scott, if I may, I don't know when that officially starts, but has there been discussion, or should there be discussion, as to when we might start meeting in person again, giving the lift of the mandates?
That's a great question. I don't recall. Yeah, Matt, Chairman Emeritus, I guess. Are we going with that?
We were solicited at the top of the year from the town clerk with what our preferences. Is it going to be in person under a given set of rules, or is it going to be virtual? State your preference for the year is essentially how that was solicited of us. And so we went virtual for 2022.
So that's for the whole calendar year?
Presumably. If there's, if we want to go back do something different. I mean, the town itself, you know, come the warmer months, may decide to put out guidance. We'll see. I leave that in our chairwoman's capable hands.
I guess we'll take that one, yeah, stay the course for now and see how the town may or may not adjust its footing as we get further into the year.
New business agenda item 4B. This was suggested to us. It might have been you, Mr. Daly, at the last meeting, coordination with the town and other commissions. I remember you were citing at the time, maybe it was the Bike Ped Commission and also a council designee, perhaps, securing that for us. I mean, we kind of, a part of this was covered under the previous discussion, right? Where we are recommending a resolution encouraging the coordination of ourselves with others for a higher purpose. But I merely put this on as an agenda item in case others wanted to bring their own thoughts to this at this time.
Sorry, just a point of a question. Sean Daly, CEC Commissioner, is this on the school buses?
Nope, that's the next one.
Okay.
This is in isolation.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry.
Kim Hughes, CEC. Can you provide me just with a little bit more background on what where this agenda item came about?
I think just from idle discussion and what folks would want to know about at the next meeting. It had been a long-running, probably a 2020, 2021-ish, 2019-ish sort of an agenda item for discussion as we were questioning existentially ourselves and deciding that you know, we would be looking to realize the broader scope of our abilities beyond wetlands pre-approvals, right? And so at that time, there was a lot of ideas going around about does this merge with other commissions into a super commission somehow, or are members selected for other purposes? And you know, just to make it very brief, it ended up the latter. The town created a sustainability advisory commission to be serving for purpose of qualifications under sustainable CT and certification under that rubric. And so that was kind of the closest thing, in my opinion, to where that landed, even if it was inexact. So it was a long-running discussion from earlier on. It has pertinence to this day to the effect that folks want it to. I'll say that.
Okay, thank you. I will just add quickly, excuse me, Sean, if that, like, from my outsider perspective, even this issue about gas-powered leaf blowers and other lawn equipment is, I was kind of curious how, like, clean energy, you know, the relation, kind of the common interest of both of our groups and how issues like that get divvied up and or you know, distributed to different groups. And it landed here with the CEC, but it, you know, it strikes me as coordination is called for. And one more quick add, sorry, just why has there ever been thought to a town representative and an employee of the town taking part on this commission, or more, you know, a revolving door or something?
A little bit. And we wouldn't want to fully conscript her without her own assent, but the town's recycling coordinator might actually, she was a guest speaker and she was received to much fanfare. And so without putting her on the spot, without her here, that's one option, right? Among others, I would say.
And, oh, sorry.
Are we going in order?
Thank you. Sean Daly, CEC member. So a couple of things for Commissioner Hughes. So on the West Hartford government website, it says the Conservation and Environmental Commission develops and conserves natural resources and protects the integrity of the environment within the territorial limits of the town. So it's a pretty, and I think also at the time, Commissioner McCunis had read some of the mission of the organization. So it is rather broad in scope that our CEC does have. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why, and maybe Commissioner Scott will consider this for future meetings, is I do know in talking with members of the town planning and zoning that there used to be a very, very solid relationship with the Conservation Environmental Commission, and that desire is, there is a desire to want to strengthen that relationship with us. So I would like to see us invite the chairman of the town planning and zoning to talk about kind of how the relationship has been in the past, how they'd like to have it in the future. And also for the benefit of Commissioner Hughes, we did have kind of a strategic session about a year ago where we kind of talked about where is the CEC headed, what are some of the things that we want to do, and a lot of this discussion came out of that strategy session. Thank you.
Scott.
Just some additional backstory. So, Commissioner Hughes, the meetings you've attended so far are not representative of the general tenor or flavor of a meeting that you would have experienced circa 2018, 2019, when I was newer on the commission. And at that time, a lot of our work was focused on a sort of dress rehearsal, if you will, for applicants coming before town planning and zoning, which is the statutory inland wetlands authority in West Hartford. Applicants would come in with site plans and say, well, we'll put our silt fences here, and we're, well away from the wetlands there, and we're going to preserve that tree. So very granular site by site review of specific projects that were about to go before town planning and zoning for like a wetlands review. And so we had like a dialogue with the applicant and helped build the record so the town planning and zoning could better focus, I guess, their efforts, because they have a lot of work on their plate. So there was some dialogue and some strategic conversation about, is this activity providing value? And then when COVID happened, there was kind of we all collectively adjusted our footing. But as we hopefully emerge on the other side, I think, to echo Mr. Daly's point, I think it makes sense to say, like, hey, do you guys want us to start doing this again? Like was that useful? Should we pick that task back up? And if not, how can we provide the most value to our community during these during the time that we allocate to this commission?
And Mr. Newton.
I was going to make many of the same comments that Chairman Scott just made, so I'll just say that.
You just wanted to call her Chairman Scott.
Yeah, I did. I was the first one, I think, right?
Well, thank you.
No, that's great.
Anything else on this one, Mr. Daly?
I just wanted to comment, and to Chairman Scott's point, I have talked with a few members of the town planning and zoning, and they are interested in exactly your comments and getting back to that. And we have had, actually, as I recall, we had a similar discussion when there was dredging of Trout Brook.
True.
Yeah.
I do want to say too that I can't remember who brought up the Sustainability Advisory Group, but they will be not the group itself, but some of the representatives from the group will be making a presentation in front of one of the town standing committees this coming Thursday. And I think in their recommendations, they touch upon this issue, not specific to the commission here, but just the overall approach to conservation and environmental and sustainability issues. We do have a number of different commissions and areas that are kind of tasked with various aspects of this, and so I think it'll be interesting to see what their recommendations are and how they're received from town council, and whether there may be some structural changes in response to those recommendations going forward.
All right, good to move on to 4C. And this was also at one of the commissioners' requests. Hey, can we have an update? Because this was an item that I believe it was when we first transitioned to virtual in mid 2020. We were starting to examine the issue of bus contracts with the school district, and like most school districts, it is third-party contracted for services. And given our charge under our mandate does include clean air within the territorial borders of the town, we were thinking at the time, should we be looking into back to the term non-emitting, zero emissions forms of school buses that are out there for use in the town, to begin integrating those in as of the next request for proposal cycle that the town was going to enter into, which my understanding at that time was that it was 2022 to begin in 2023 for service. And so it is a timely sort of item. Slightly strange for me in the sense that I'm overly cautious about conflicts of interest, even where none formally exist right here. I should say that with my employer, we do have a legislative proposal in that is getting some wheels on this, or rather, there is a group of concerned and active citizens that has a legislative proposal and that is supporting something that is very similar to what I was supporting a few years ago. Maybe I should clarify it like that. Anyways,
I'm sorry,
overall,
did you say
calling
wheel?
BS on
Did
me
you
right
say
there.
It
wheels
was
on
the
this?
pun. I was
Yeah.
we were teasing you about the pun.
So let me update you on the overall landscape here without getting into a whole presentation once again on the merits of the issues here. There is Senate Bill 92 in the General Assembly this year, which is proposing to allow school districts that are normally capped for their service contracts at 5 years at a time as a maximum term length for any given contract, to go out to 10 years if it's for zero emissions transport. And so it's a very simple and scalpel approach that is currently under deliberation, given as a municipal option, and with a broad variety of stakeholders already consulted and weighing in on that. And so that's an active matter of discussion at the state level. I don't even know if that was out or known as of the suggestion at last meeting that we discussed this, but I figured since it was a new development, in that case, with this on the agenda, I would bring that to you just as an FYI. Again, this is another one of those cross-cutting issues that the Clean Energy Commission or others may be just as, if not more, interested in and pushing. For background for the folks that weren't with us in 2020 at the time, we did on an informal basis, a few of us were interested in promoting an external group affiliated with US DOE's Clean Cities to be setting up a ride and drive in the town hall parking lot. And so one of the manufacturers, Lion, Lion, had brought a zero emission school bus for the town to check out. So that was where that went at that time. I'm not putting anything on the table right here at this time. Maybe I can get back to that. But, you know, again, I cite the different hats I wear as reason for possible reticence there at the same time. Mr. Daly, hand up.
Thank you. Sean Daly, CEC member. Yeah, so one was I thought that the town was interested in the CEC making some sort of recommendation concerning school buses and transportation. That's what I recall, and this was probably going back, what, a year and a half, 2 years. And the reason why I remember was because I remember we were looking at electric buses, and I remember I had a big issue with electric buses because the last thing I wanted to do was put more pressure on an electric grid where 56% of our electricity comes from fossil fuel. But then we heard from somebody about propane buses, which quite honestly completely changed my mind about the subject. So my question is do we, you know, is the town still interested in a recommendation from the CEC? And is that something we should be taking up as an objective or as a project or as a proposal for 2022?
It's a great question. How about we find out the answer and we bring it forward at, let's call it the March meeting if we have that data to present. If you want, I can take the lead in just doing the outreach and keeping it as a simple question that can elicit a yes/no answer at this time. How's that sound?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
You got it. Happy to help. All right. Anything else for the good of the group tonight? Mr. Daly.
I know, I'm sorry. I do have one more item, and in full transparency, living across from the Yukon property, now that we know who the buyer is of the property, I do think that that falls under the purview of the CEC, given that the majority, as I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of the property is still zoned as wetlands. I think it would be important for this commission to take a proactive role in at the very least inviting the new owners to speak in front of the CEC about their plans and how it could affect the Wetlands Commission with their plans for the property.
Comments?
Ted Newton, CEC Commissioner. I would agree with what Sean is proposing, but I do wonder why we wouldn't also see that as a matter of course anyway. If I recall, the previous owner came to us with some wetlands proposals, and I know that was kind of the warm up for the Planning and Zoning Commission the following week. But it would seem like we would at least see their plans for actual changes to the landscape that would impact the wetlands prior to that happening. If in fact we were reverting to the rule that we had, 2 or 3 years ago when we last saw, or when we saw the previous owner come before us. I guess that begs two larger questions. One is we certainly can invite the new owner to come in even before they're at that stage where there's drawings and other types of things to look at and just have a general discussion of what their overall plans are. If we do that, I just would be curious as to what the benefit of that would be. Where does that fall within our kind of general peer review? I'm sure that they can come in and do that. Just what would we do that with that information, I guess, is my question. And then the second is really more broad, which is, are we going to be receiving these types of referrals the way we used to in the past? We used to have probably an average of one per meeting. Some meetings we wouldn't have any, sometimes we had multiple. And I can't imagine that over the last 2 years that there hasn't been any kind of building project taking place in West Hartford where it hasn't had some level of impact on the wetlands. I'm not sure who I directed either one of those questions to.
If
Chairman
you,
Scott?
I'm not even sure if I'm the facilitator still.
Yeah.
I would say this is CEC member Sean Daly. I would say number one, yes, it definitely falls under our purview. Number two, I completely agree with you, Ted, and my concern is that the CEC could potentially be bypassed because it hasn't been used in this capacity as it should. Which to me is all the more reason to be a little bit more proactive than reactive in this particular situation. And I think it would be advantageous because if there aren't any plans currently at this time with the new ownership, which I find doubtable. Would that be the right term?
Doubtful.
Yeah, doubtful. Then, but if so, it certainly then our proactive movement then definitely brings us to the forefront that they would need to bring us in the loop as these plans are being made. And then if there are plans that are being made, there are things that they could help us get ahead of as far as our thought process and decision making process for such a project.
Kim Hughes, CEC. Can I, again, sorry to ask for background again. So I'm understanding that this is kind of a more common, this is not what I expected the CEC did. So and it makes sense that this is part of CEC's work. So I'm just wondering, in this case, the Yukon property, what, for anyone who has for anyone who has something in mind, like what decisions they might make that might become an issue, or what's this about? What will you be primed and listening for from the new owner?
If I may respond, yeah, thank you. If I may respond, so yeah, Commissioner Hughes, Sean Daly, CEC member. The biggest issue right now is the remediation. Right, there is a ton of remediation work that needs to be done with that property, and even the remediation process itself could disturb the environment and create lasting effects around the surrounding neighborhood. And again, as I've been transparent before, I live on Asylum Avenue across the street, so I admit that I have a vested interest in understanding what would be happening and going on with this property, and happy to recuse myself if the CEC so chooses from any decision making. But I think remediation is one big issue. The second big issue is what exactly is going to be done with the property. There have been a lot of rumors about the property, and whether and how that will affect the wetlands, and whether or not the new owners will be interested in requesting a change in zoning. Also, I believe that property is zoned for education and education and residential. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Emily, you probably know this better than I do.
Single family residential, this is
Single.
Commissioner Bush.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Bush. Yeah. So it's currently zoned for single family residential and education. And my understanding, and again, this is rumors only, is that may not be the plans for this property, and that's going to be important for the CEC to be aware of.
And this is Commissioner Bush. One more item. There's a significant amount of wetlands throughout the entire property. So that would be our purvey anyway. So
Do we have, thank you, sir. Do we have hand raisers on who to take the lead on making the inquiry to the town about a subsequent property owner and their plans? It was non-public information. I remember the last time this came up on an agenda.
Now, this is Sean, CEC member. I'm happy to take that on if the commission so chooses. And my understanding is right at the time it was non-public information, but now it's public information as to who the ownership is. So I'm happy to take that on, at least for the tenure of my existence in the commission.
Sounds great, sir.
Yeah.
The time is 8:34 p.m. and my computer's battery is dying. Do we have any motions for adjournment?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Drive safe, everybody.
Opposed.
Thanks
Keep
much.
going. I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Matt.
and thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt,
Students
for
meeting.
Thank you so
everything.
much
Yes, and
Yep.
for your service over these
congratulations.
years.
Yep.
Yeah, Matt, and thank you, and congratulations, Emily.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
See you all next month.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.